girls, and welcome to another episode of the Hey Girl podcast. I'm Bethany Needham, one of your hosts. I'm so excited to have you join us again this week for another incredible story. This one is coming from my new co-host. Her name is Laurie, though, as you're going to learn in this episode, in my something about the Canadian way that I enunciate my words, apparently I cannot get her first name right. So I've been thinking about it since I interviewed her, and I've decided that I'm probably just going to have to give her a nickname, because no matter how hard I try, when I attempt to say her name correctly, it sounds more ridiculous than when I just say it my normal way. So I got to thinking about all the things that I love about her and the things I appreciate about her. And with her being my neighbor and now being this new person that I get to process information with, the obvious nickname that came to mind was Wilson. And I don't know how many of you are going to get the connection, but for those of you who do, I hope you appreciate it. And I haven't told her that I've given her this nickname yet, so I'm debating, do I text her or do I just let her listen to the episode and find out that, Laurie, I've renamed you, and from here on out, you are my Wilson. And I love you for it, because it's hard processing all these stories and information all by myself, because sometimes my brain can be a very, very scary place. I'm just saying. I hope those of you who are local to me or anywhere up here in the Northeast are surviving this insane cold that we have had. My dog, Fenway, who I'm sure I've talked about before because I love her to death, she normally loves the snow. And I mean, like, 5-year-old kid on Christmas morning loves the snow. But this recent cold has her begging to come inside. Like, the second she goes out to use the bathroom, she's immediately barking to come back in. She wants nothing to do with it. So we have officially gotten too cold if my incredibly furry golden doodle just can't handle it. So I'm looking forward to it getting just a little bit warmer. I don't mind the snow. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but it's tough when you step out in the cold and it feels like it punches you in the face. It's not fun. So praying for warmer weather. I heard somewhere that we're getting in the 30s one of these days, which if you're listening from down south, you probably think I'm crazy. But right now, that sounds like a beach day compared to what we have been having. But today, this Monday morning, whether you're commuting to work, whether you're at home with the fam, whether you're, at the gym, wherever you listen to this, I hope you are warm. I hope you're relaxed. And I hope that this story just really encourages your heart today. I got to be away at Camperia this weekend, and the speaker had this quote that I pulled out my phone and immediately wrote into my notes, because I was like, this is one, so true, and just why we do what we do on Hey Girl. And here's a quote. It says, "A story that's untold can't help anyone." And this was such a great challenge for me, and a reminder of why we do what we do here, and sharing stories with people isn't just for entertainment. This isn't like watching a movie or whatever. This is people being real and authentic and sharing the good and the bad and the hard about their lives and their stories with a purpose, so that this can be something that can be helpful to you. And I have yet to interview any woman that their story, no matter how different it is from mine, doesn't impact me in some way. And so many women along the way have encouraged me, have challenged me, have definitely pushed me closer to Jesus and challenged me to continue to walk after him. And Laurie is no exception. It's part of why I'm really excited to have her as a bigger part of this podcast. I'm really excited for you to get to know her more by listening to her story. And I just hope you enjoy this episode today. We love you. We can't wait to hear from more of you. Again, continue to share this. It's helpful for us, and we love to get these stories out to as many women as we can. Enjoy this story from my co-host and dear friend, Laurie, aka Wilson. Okay, I get to tell a story about you. Sorry, before we begin. I didn't plan this, so it's all going to be
off the cuff.
Yes, I work better that way.
Got it.
I got to meet Laurie through my church, and we were in life group together, who, I don't know what your church calls it, small group, life group, whatever.
It sounds creepy if you don't call it life group. Like, do I need to go to group for my life? Like, yes, you do.
It's funny you say that, Laurie, because one of my memories is you and Jared admitting to our life group how much you fought starting a life group because of what you thought of it. Like when someone said, hey, you really need to join a life group, which I'm going to have you actually share a lot of your story in that.
Okay.
But in that moment, I just remember being like, I don't know this girl, but I like her a lot. And since then, we have gotten to know you through group, through church. And my husband, who I think, in a good way, if there's a good way to say this, is maybe one of the most critically minded people. Like, he's not one to just throw around empty accolades. Does that make sense? In his words, and I quote, Laurie is the funniest person that I know.
Stop.
I'm not kidding. I don't make these things up.
I love when people appreciate my funniness. I try to tell them.
Seriously. I tell them I'm hilarious.
Yes.
No, you are hilarious. And so here are the things that I think of when I think of you. One, I love your humor because I feel like for whatever reason, my type of humor, which is not as funny, but it exists.
It's there.
Just appreciates I feel like you get me. And sometimes I wonder if half of our conversations are just sarcasm with like an ounce of, oh yeah, we actually said something legitimate. Yeah, I like that a lot. The other thing that I greatly appreciate about you is, I'm trying to think of how to word this, but how you are with my kids. Okay, we're going to get sappy just for a minute.
Yeah, where are your tissues, by the way?
I don't have any. Wipe it on your sweater. Wipe it on your adorable Uggs.
Matching Uggs, co-host.
Seriously. As a mom, it's one thing when you meet someone and your friends and you're like, oh, we get along really well. But it's not super common to have a friend who is not in the season of life where they have their own kids that is so good with your kids, and my kids thinking love you.
Really?
Oh my goodness. This morning, I'm like, hey guys, FYI, Laurie's coming over because we're doing Hey Girl. Before I even got the sentence out, Mercy from the stairwell, Laurie's coming over? Yes! Like,
Aww.
They just love it.
I feel like I smother them. Like, hi guys, I'm here, like, hang out with your mom, but I'm here for you too. And they're like, okay, we're gonna play video games.
They love you.
It's mutual.
The only reason that they're not up here right now is because they threaten their lives. Because I'm like,
I think I see their feet under the door.
They're literally staring at you. I would be creeped out.
I love them.
But I appreciate those things about you. And the other thing, this will be my final Laurie story. Laurie story.
Oh, we're actually going to have to pause real quick because there's just a little tutorial on my name. So,
I'm excited.
Lori is Laurie, and that would rhyme with story. But my mom decided to name me Laurie, and it's Laurie.
Oh my gosh.
And so that rhymes with, like, sorry. Like, I'm sorry, Laurie. And I try to tell people this, and it's really embarrassing because then people be like, Larry, what is that? And it's just terrible. But officially, it rhymes with sorry, so you gotta get used to it if you're gonna be the best host to me as a new co-host.
Okay, this is only gonna get more embarrassing.
Uh-oh.
Because you know that I grew up in Canada, right?
Hey.
Yeah, it's worse.
Uh-oh.
When you say, what did you just say your name's supposed to rhyme with?
Sorry.
You
say sorry!
So I am saying what you are saying,
no.
but it doesn't come out right.
Is there anything that you say, ah?
I can practice. Hold on.
Oh no, it's not gonna come
Laurie.
out right.
My mouth doesn't work.
So, my nieces and nephews, they're really young, they can't pronounce words. They just call me Auntie Lala. So if that's just gonna be easier for you as a Canadian.
Auntie Lala.
Well, no auntie for you, just Lala.
Lala.
Laurie.
It really is a hard, and like saying Ari messes up my
you can practice.
I'm gonna practice.
Bethany's easy.
I apologize, Laurie, for saying
I just had to get it out there because it's like this thing that like most people know about me. Like even my DJ on my wedding day, I had to like email him the pronunciation because I was like, if on my wedding day the whole day he's calling me Laurie and like everyone knows it's Laurie, then it's gonna be, you know.
So
kind
basically, if you're not Canadian, get it right. But if you're one of my people, we're gonna send grace out to all the Canadians who say sorry.
It's not just you; it's like the majority of Americans.
Laurie, your name rhymes with sorry. I don't understand the issue.
That's kind of cute. So back to my accolades.
I'm
sorry to interrupt.
My final remembrance is when we were clearing out like a bunch of wood and like brush from our yard, and you and your husband came over to our house and helped us with this like obnoxious house project.
Your errands.
Yeah, literally. Like our house gross errands. And you were like, yeah, we totally want to help. And I remember being like, I don't know very many people who don't have like a long history or some sort of family obligation that come to someone's house to do cruddy chores.
Right.
Because there was like, I feel like poison ivy mixed in there.
And I'm allergic, so that would have been dangerous.
Girl, legit, the love. So all of that long intro to say, I have just a lot of appreciation for you. So when I was thinking and knew that Jen was going to be stepping out, and I didn't want to just keep going by myself because it's really weird processing interviews by yourself. You were one of the first that came to mind. And I was like, you know what? I like this girl. I think the world needs a little bit more Lala in her life. And so I would like to introduce all of you listeners to, I'm going to practice this and get it, Laurie. But why don't you take some time, because you're new to our listeners, and I would love for them to hear some of your story, where you came from, just your own faith journey. I just think there's a lot of really, really powerful things, and I know you're like, I'm just your normal everyday, but I think there's some really neat things in your story of things that God has done, how he's really drawn you to himself. So start at the beginning and walk us through it.
First, I want to say that I feel like the understudy in, like, the school musical that's like, hey, maybe I'll get a chance to perform. And I'm, like, a huge fan of Jen and her laugh and all the episodes that you guys put together. So I hope that Jen and I can be friends, and just know that, like, we're praying for her. And it's an honor to kind of step in and help out. But you guys are definitely the foragers and have total respect for
She's going to love you.
Okay,
so
cool.
You know.
I guess my story is I am from Framingham, Massachusetts. It was the largest town in the United States population-wise, and it's like our claim to fame, but this past year it became a city, so it's lost that title, unfortunately. And I went to school in Boston, and now we live in Northborough, which is 2 towns over. Happen to be on the same street as Bethany and Andy.
Yeah.
So they pass our house, we pass their house, we put up shades. We try not to spend too much time outdoors. No, just kidding.
That's probably true, actually.
But when I was really young, I went to Chapel of the Cross. And I was 2 years old when my parents got divorced. And really strange. I was like, yay, 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays. Like, I thought it was, like, awesome. I got, like, stepsisters. I don't know. It didn't really have a problem. And I think I have seen life through rose-colored glasses a lot. So it's kind of interesting. But my dad kept going to church, and I would spend every other weekend with him. And just had this great foundation of kind of Christ in my life and my faith, and was just kind of a really happy child, teenager growing up. I didn't really get into trouble. I know when I was 15, I was in health class, and they made you write a letter to yourself 5 years later. So at age 15, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll be a nurse, which my sister was a nurse. I should not become a nurse. But one of the other things I said was like, I hope you're going to church every day. Like, God is number one. Always prioritize him in prayer and your faith. And it was really funny because when I got it at age 20, I was like in the middle of college, wasn't really going to church, definitely had my faith, but kind of maybe was in a more like selfish season. And I was like, what a weirdo. Like, why would I like write all of this? Like, well, I don't know. I guess it's like, what else was going on when I was 15 that I was like so devout? I didn't even think of myself as that way.
You were judging your 15-year-old self.
Totally.
Hardcore.
Yeah. I even wrote a funny joke. I was like, maybe you'll be in jail right now. Obviously, I was a weird. But
so your sense of humor started at a young age.
Yes,
I gotcha.
exactly. But I'm really grateful because I kind of boomeranged, and I now have been going to chapel for 2 years and really enjoying kind of growing my faith in new ways, and now as an adult and with my husband and the friendships that we're making and books that we're reading. It's just feeling like, you know, coming home and getting away from maybe those teen or early 20 years where it was more just living in the moment or whatnot. So
we are a girls podcast, which means that we have great appreciation for the love story portion.
Aww.
I also know, just based on your timeline here, that you've been with Jared. Jared is her husband. For how long now?
A decade.
Wow. Okay. How old are... Okay, you have to give your age now.
I forget sometimes, but I think I'm 29.
Okay, so that means that Jared entered the scene before you boomeranged. So why don't we focus just for a minute on that? What did that whole journey... Because he entered in those college... I'm assuming college?
Yep.
College years, having fun, doing your thing. Walk us through a little bit of what that was like, journeying with him and then kind of re-entering your faith.
Sure. So I had a boyfriend in high school for like 2 years. Nice guy, but I remember meeting Jared, and I think Jared actually had a party, and I just was like, wow, I don't know why, I just really like this guy. Like, he seems like a genuine guy, really nice. I just want to get to know him. Like, no alternative motives. You know, I had like my boyfriend or high school kind of relationship. We ended up hanging out and just had a lot in common and enjoyed each other's company. So I had to kind of say, oh, boyfriend, I'm kind of more interested in hanging out with Jared than you, and kind of that whole piece. But I think more importantly, so the first time Jared and I hung out, we went to get an ice cream at Friendly's, so romantic. And then we went to jump on his trampoline. And anyone that has a trampoline, like, I want to be your friend, because my parents never got me a trampoline. I really wanted one. I have one today, but we'll get to that later. So Jared and I went and jumped on his trampoline, and it was nighttime, and we were laying on the trampoline, and we looked up, and we both saw a shooting star. And I was like, I wish he was my boyfriend. And Jared was like, I wish he was my girlfriend. And it was just kind of this like really odd. I hadn't seen a lot of shooting stars in my life. Definitely God planted Jared in my life at that time. And luckily he built up some courage to eventually ask me to be his girlfriend. He had a rose like on the Bachelorette. We started
Wait, were there
dating.
like 20 girls?
No. His mom might say so.
Oh, gosh. Maybe we'll interview him later to get the details of it.
And so he asked me to be his girlfriend on May 6, 2007. So if you're a numbers person, that's 5, 6, 7. So it's very easy for him to remember.
Smart man.
Yeah. And so we dated all throughout college. That was the end of our freshman year, obviously after college, and now we are married. And the funny thing is that we're from the same hometown. So I like to imagine that we could have been playing on the same park at the same time, or in a pizza line at the same time. Like, our lives have definitely crossed paths, and I think that's why we have such a great friendship, is we've live parallel next to each other. And he's just a great person. And of course, husbands drive you crazy from time to time, but I feel really blessed to have him in my life.
So when you met him, because you were saying you lived parallel lives, but you, when you were younger, obviously had this faith background in church. What was did he come in kind of in the same place, like he'd already had his own faith, or was that something that was introduced through you once, again, I think you used the term boomerang, but once you kind of turned back into that?
Yeah, so I think Jared helped my boomerang. So both of us would say that we were Christian, and we both had Jesus in our hearts, but we didn't really like go to church or practice, or we were kind of in school and work and with friends, that type of thing. So Jared grew up Catholic, and so if there was like a funeral, unfortunately, or, different events, I would have to go to Catholic church, which I always didn't have a great experience. I actually remember my grandmother's funeral, the priest yelled at me, and I was like, don't you know it's like my grandmother's funeral? I don't know which hand to put on what or what to say when. And so I just didn't have a great experience, but we kind of were like, okay, we'll figure that out later. And we also both said, someday, let's go to church together. And so throughout college, my dad, and he would send us emails of his pastor's sermon or a book, and we'd be like, oh gosh, thanks, Dad, real helpful. But he did consistently remind us to keep Jesus, in our thoughts. And so sometimes we would go to church with him or one of his friends, and we had kind of wacky experiences, especially for Jared growing up Catholic. So it was very serious and respectful, and some of the churches we went to were more exuberant, and he was like, what are these crazy people, and just not comfortable. I think one pastor hugged everyone in the church, which, some people can appreciate that, but if you're new and had never been to this church before, you're like, why is this guy hugging me, and we gotta go. So long story short, when we were going to get married, I called a justice of the peace that our venue recommended, and the justice of the peace was like, well, I'll marry you, but it won't be in the eyes of God. And that just hurt my heart. I was like, wow, I definitely want to get married in the eyes of God too. So I talked to Jared and said, all right, let's find a church and go to a few locally. So we went to a Catholic church, and it was, pretty standard, and at the end you just leave, and we didn't meet anyone or anything.
Right.
The next week we went to chapel, and it was just perfect. The sermon that our pastor gave definitely struck a chord with Jared. We met a few people. We liked that it wasn't too exuberant. It was kind of comfortable.
You mean Derek didn't hug you before you?
Not that service. Luckily, I tried not to push because, I didn't want Jared to feel uncomfortable, but he said, yeah, let's go back next week, and the next week, and the next week. And the more we went, the more we learned and grew, and eventually asked the pastor if he could marry us, which he did, and we went through premarital classes with him. So just had this great experience, and guess my husband, growing up Catholic, had never been baptized as an adult, so then he got baptized last summer as his choice, and his family came, and I think every day we're just learning more and just grateful that we're here.
I love that. So you have to share, because I alluded to it early, but you show up at this church. Obviously, Jared's coming from a Catholic background, and our church does push the kind of small group, life group a lot, because we are not a huge church, but sizable enough that if you're not in some type of a small group, you could just come and go. It would be easy to do. I think we're 450, whatever it is. And so you're coming in as okay, Jared, we're going to try this. And you start getting, I'm sure, hey, are you part of a life group? I just think it's funny because as someone who grew up in the church and has grown up around the language of church, because every church kind of has their own language, ironically, the churches I grew up were similar to what you're describing. The pastor, which was my dad, by the way, when they were done preaching, they always went to the back and literally shook hands or hugged. He wasn't necessarily hug everyone, but they saw everybody as they left. So you could not sneak out of the church. But this church, the one that we attend now, Chapel of the Cross, is, you know what, Derek isn't snuggling everyone on their way out the door, but we do encourage people, like, find a life group, plug in, get to know people, be in community, because that's where we grow, like, we grow together. The term do life together is used a lot, which I do crack up now because I've heard so many people outside the church be like, you know, that sounds super creepy if you don't understand what you're talking about.
Like, life is a verb. Why do you have to do life? Like, just live.
So the question is, what was it for you guys? Tell me a little bit about your transitioning into a life group, what you were thinking versus what you actually experienced in that.
It was kind of odd because after a few weeks of going to chapel, we're like, okay, this seems like our church. Let's get looped in. They had a membership class, and so we went to the membership class to learn about what that entails. And I remember people were surprised, like, oh, you're already becoming a member? You've only been going here a month. And we were like, okay, maybe did we, like, jump the gun? Are we not supposed to do this yet? But we felt like we knew it was for us, so we're like, yeah, we'll look into membership. That part was pretty easy. And then they're like, okay, and now a life group. And define life group would have been helpful because we were like, what are we going to show up to? Is there dancing? Is there music? We're not sure. We're just going to show up and see. I'm the type of person that's like, well, let's go to a few different life groups and then we'll see which one fits the best, and that's the one we'll go to. And Jared's more like black or white, and so he's like, we're just going to go to one. And because I don't want to hurt like people's feelings if we choose a different one, so let's just try this one. And I think it's a great match for us, and we're happy that we're there. But yeah, walking into, you know, someone's home and meeting all of these people that have known each other for a while. And we went to the last life group before summer break. So this life group that we go to, they take the summers off to, you know, gallivant and travel and enjoy the sun.
We love our gallivanting.
So we went the very last one. So it's like, all right, we only have to go to one, and then we're off until September, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, I think it's uncomfortable if you're not used to that community of how much people share in life group and how you really dive into scripture. And I think it's important not to just, you know, have a facade, and we all have our different struggles and problems going on, and being able to share them in a small group or life group now, LG, as I put it on my calendar, has
love
been
it.
Pretty awesome, and we love you all.
Oh, we are in the same life group, in case you didn't catch on to that. So now here we are. You've been coming to chapel for a while. We've gotten to know each other through life group and hanging out outside of life group. That's when you're like really in, is the moment it's not just life group meetings. You start hanging out because you're choosing to, not because it's scheduled. You're basically sucked into our cult. Welcome.
I know, that's what some of my friends probably think.
They're
like home
she's
friends.
In a cult.
Yeah. We do have other friends. I know Bethany's story about, hey, do you want to come over and do chores? And like we came, you would think like, yikes, those people, they don't have any other friends? But we totally do.
I didn't realize how pathetic I made you sound, but good call.
That's okay.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of friends. I've been to a fake birthday of your husband. Okay, it wasn't fake. What did you... It was this half birthday, because only you would throw a half birthday party.
It's hard to surprise people. And so if you want to surprise someone on their birthday, don't throw it on their birthday.
That's true. He was definitely surprised.
We called it Almost 30. So, and when I say we, I just mean me and my dog. We were the ones that planned it. So yes, it was a huge surprise. Everyone's like, hey, surprise! And he's like, for what? Like,
I would just think, he's like, so what are we doing?
Yeah. But then he liked it later. Delayed gratification.
You know what? Sometimes that's the best.
Totally.
But I would say that party showed me that you have a lot of people in your life. I actually appreciated the fact I did not grow up in one place and like stick around. So I don't get that experience myself of friends that were middle school or elementary school or, I've known them their whole lives. And I feel like the whole party I was meeting people that I'm like, wow, you guys have been in these people's lives for all of these years. I think that's super cool.
And you were a total social butterfly. I loved it.
You know what? I was like, game face on, y'all. Just kidding. I actually like meeting new people. My husband, on the other hand, poor guy, my introverted husband, who I forget what he was exhausted from something. And so I just, threw him in a hyper social situation, which looking back, that was probably mean of me. I should have been like, stay home and rest. You're fine.
We're glad he was there.
Yeah, he did good.
And if you weren't invited, there was a max capacity of 30 people at this venue. And so that was like the most stressful part, because I hate the feeling of like being left out. And like when you live 2 towns from where you grew up, your college friends also live locally, and then you have all these church crazy people that want to hang out with you. It was like, how am I going to whittle this down to 30? So I kicked off my mom and stepdad. They were like not coming. No offense, but we were like, oh, it's friends only. So
how is that no offense?
Well,
you're out. No offense.
You could say anything. No offense.
You're ugly. No offense.
She's not talking to me.
No, I'm not. Obviously. She's gorgeous.
Aww.
All right. So let's take it here and now.
Yes.
So, Hey Girl is all about run your race in your place. Your season of life. We've talked about some of it. You're married to Jared. How long have you all been married?
14 months.
14.
It's like a baby.
Oh,
like you say months.
I was going to say you're still counting it in months.
Not really. It's like 10 years again, so remember that whole part.
Oh,
now yeah. I just get to call him husby instead of boy toy.
Not what I was expecting.
Or boyfriend, whatever you want to edit in, producer. It's up to you.
You choose. Okay, so 10 years dating, you've been married 14 months.
Okay.
And you are working full-time?
Yep.
What do you do for work?
I had the hardest time choosing what I wanted my career to be in college. And I was like, I'll just do marketing, because basically you can market anything and just figure it out later. So that's what was my plan. And luckily my dad, who kept sending me chain emails and reminding me of Jesus's love, was kind enough to say something like, make sure you do something that brings glory to God. Now that I'm a bit more mature in my faith, I think there's a lot of different ways that I could have done that. But at the same time, when I was trying to think about, like, how could I do something that was meaningful, my marketing teacher had this class called Corporate Responsibility, and it was basically how you can use business to benefit society, the community, and the environment. So you're not just having a business to maximize profit, but you're trying to think about those win-win situations. And I fell in love with the class and decided to continue. It was 2010 when I would have graduated. Worst time to graduate, right after the housing market crash, and there was a competitive market. So I decided to stay and get my master's in business and concentrate in corporate responsibility to kind of deepen my knowledge. And I had some great internships and work experience that I didn't feel like I'd be taking my master's without knowing what I was doing. I concentrated in corporate responsibility. Outside of college, my first job, I worked at this really cool marketing firm on Newberry Street in Boston. And I was like, yeah, look at me go, doing my dream job. Well, after a few months, I got laid off, which was really humbling. It was one of those, it was a small boutique firm. And so the last one that they hired would be the first one to be laid off if they needed to make changes, type of thing. And I remember I was on the train with, like, my plant in one arm and, like, a brown box in the other.
No!
I was like, Mom, just give me ice cream or something.
That's like a scene from a movie.
It was. But no, I learned a lot, and I still keep in touch with them. Great firm. But then after that, I worked for a very mission-driven firm called Preserve. They make products from recycled plastic. They're most well known for their toothbrush. You can get it at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods. This is a commercial.
I got to put in
the show notes. Preservedproducts.com. But they all are about like reducing waste and finding solutions to make products that are lighter weight on the environment. So had a great experience there as sales and marketing manager. It was 12 people in Waltham, Mass. They had dogs in the office. We had volunteer days, potlucks. It was very homey. But after a few years, I was like, okay, what's next? I like to get outside of my comfort zone and just try some new things. And so I went to work for Preserve's number one customer. So really their number one customer would be like a Whole Foods or natural stores, but how they sell to them is through a distributor. That's my current employer. So I work for a natural foods distributor doing business development. I've been in this role for about 7 months now, and basically I work between legal and marketing and finance to figure out how our distributor can work with retailers to sell them healthy food. And I think back to my dad's original advice, being a part of that mission or doing something for the glory of God. Natural food is lighter on our environment. It's healthy for people, like let food be thy medicine. And then on top of that, we have a foundation that I'm a part of. We have a volunteer committee that I'm a part of. And so it's just very well-rounded of feeling like you go to work every day, something that you're passionate about and that's making a difference.
I love that. On social media, a friend of mine was posting that they were asking themselves the question, which I think is a good question, as far as what as Christians is our responsibility when we think about the environment and all of these things. And it began a really good online, which is rare, a healthy online conversation about stewardship and our part as Christians and all of that. Because ultimately, we are called to know God, to make him known. Like, it is about the souls of people, absolutely, and bringing the gospel, but then also not forgetting that we were put here as stewards of ourselves, like the bodies that we have. And we've seen this in our nation. Like, if we don't steward our bodies well, then sickness and all of these things that we see on a rise, that hinders what we're able to do for God's kingdom. So it's all kind of, I guess, intertwined. Like, it's not just one thing or the other. If you don't take care of your body and you get sick, then you can't do the things that God's called you to do. And so, yeah, it's hard to talk about too, because, it's one of those, I feel like there's the socially acceptable kind of sins or things in our lives that we're like, okay, well, we don't go after people for what they eat. And we even joke. I'm guilty of this. Like, we joke about, I just want to, binge ice cream and Netflix all, but really like stop and be like, okay, is that actually, like you said, glorifying to God? Is this something that is really the best stewardship of what God's given me, and not just my own health, but in the time that he's given me? And so I think it's awesome. I love that you're a part of that.
I've probably had like 20 jobs in my life, but I used to work at a hospital. There's this one guy who was very devout Christian, and I remember telling him like, hey, I found my calling. I'm going to go into kind of this environmental sustainability area. And I remember distinctly him saying, why do you care about the environment? The Messiah is just going to come down and save us all anyways. And I remember being like, jaw on the floor, like, wow, that just doesn't sit right with me. I like to think of God can move mountains and he can do anything. But I also like to think of us like living in symbiosis. Like, think of what Eden would look like. We wouldn't be littering and having, unnecessary harm on our environment. So
yeah, well, stewarding the creation that God's made. I just think about the word creation. God's creative, the element that, that he's a creative God, that he's put these things all around us, and for us to be like, oh, who cares? Like, thanks God for the mountains, but I'm just going to throw all my trash all over them. I think that there is a really neat opportunity for you, especially as someone who understands the eternal value of things, and to be able to be in an industry in a company that that's not necessarily their mission statement. Like, we're about stewarding God's creation, but and you're in the midst of it and you get to kind of live that out. I think it's really cool.
And I love when you say, like, real talk, because I think I've kind of come to this place where I'm really happy in my career and where I am, but along the way it was really challenging. And I think about those 20-year-olds that have to declare a major, and it feels so ominous of, like, this, I have to decide the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And even having anxiety at different parts of, like, am I really a part of a mission, or am I now kind of just doing my job, or or even like with different coworkers, or over the years, there has been a level of anxiety at different times, and I feel like I'm kind of out of that. And I think even as you are 29 and 30s, you kind of just fill out yourself more and are in a better spot. But I just, anytime like a younger person reaches out to me looking for advice on their career or what they should do, I love to kind of share that you don't have to figure it out. And now in hindsight, it's like God figures it out. It's just really uncomfortable to go through that sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Well, in a world that tells us we need to figure it out too.
And have that control type of
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And that's where I like admire you, going out on limbs in your career and being able to say, God's my safety net, and I don't have all the answers today, but I will have them. Hopefully not after I have a panic attack. Or,
Maybe mid-panic attack.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, in real talk, that's been a season for me right now is, stepping out of my job and knowing that God's calling me to take this step, not knowing what tomorrow holds. And it, when people come up and they're like, I really admire your faith, and wanting to be like, please don't, because I am like shaking in my boots here. Yeah, like it's messy and it's day to day. And there are moments when I absolutely feel this incredible peace from God, like He's got this. And then there are also days when I am freaking out, like filling out job applications, being like, okay, I've got to take control and figure this out. Or I'm trying to manufacture answers for people when they ask, okay, so what is the next thing? And I feel like I have to have this really spiritual, clear, faith-filled answer. And all I can say is, I don't know. And then I just sound really irresponsible. But yeah.
On the outside, I think it's easier for us to appreciate you. And like, it even makes me think, down the road, if I do start to see like a calling towards something else, like knowing someone else that has gone through that and taken the leap, I think like could inspire other people in the future.
Well, I'd like to say it's an honor to be the the trailblazer. Sometimes I kind of wish I would just be the one sitting and looking at you and being like, Laura, thanks for... Just right now, I want to jump to some of the questions we like to ask as far as this season. So you're working full time. It's definitely a full...
More than full time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got a lot going on. What does it look like in this season for you to really be continuing to grow in your faith? What does investing in growing your relationship in God look like practically right now?
Yeah, so I've always been a person that likes to kind of walk the walk. So part of this kind of mission career, I don't want to just like go home and just be selfish. So I do Big Brother, Big Sister, which I've done for almost 6 years now. So just trying to spend time with and mentor a young girl and see her along her journey and hopefully give her some advice to help her grow. And I am also part of a network of executive women that we also want to see more women be in leadership roles in business. And I do kind of branding and marketing for them as well. And so, with a full-time job and a house and a dog and friends and church, and it's all wonderful. And I don't ever right now feel like stressed out from time perspective, because I think you just plan ahead and just kind of, I do say no to things and I don't really feel bad. I don't know if someone's like, oh, do you need to do this? And I'll be like, I'm not going to be enjoyable if I go, so I can't. But what was your original question?
Well, so that's a lot, obviously, the things that you're involved in, all these things. But as far as your personal relationship with God, and I know a little of this because we joke that I have a library that you come, because I'm a nerd and I love to collect books. But what do you do on a personal level, just because these things are a lot of investment, right? They're a lot of outpouring. You're pouring into the lives of these young women in this network of executive women being involved in their lives. But what does just you and God, that relationship look like? Where are the quiet spaces and how do you find those? And like you said, saying no to protect those in the midst of busyness.
Yep. So I've always had Christian contemporary music in my car. Like when I was 16, it would be so funny. Like I'd be like listening to today's hits and rapping out or something. That can be a different episode. And then I would like put on, you know, some good old Christian rock and also be belting out my lungs, although I'm really bad at singing. I wish I could do that. But, so music, I think, has always been a theme because it's not just listening to the music, it's the lyrics and being inspired. So that's continual through today. Even I sign up for SiriusXM, which is way too expensive, but to be able to just listen to those songs on demand really inspire me. And on top of that, spending time with Life Group. I did go to a women's Bible study the past few months to meet some new women and different perspectives, which was really inspiring. And even God kind of planted one of them in my heart to reach out to, who might kind of potentially be like a spiritual mentor, and spending time thinking about what am I filling, you know, my time up with so when I do have downtime. So is it just more Netflix and movies, or getting recommendations on books from people that I trust, like you, or even our pastor gave me the book Your Work Matters to God, and that kind of really opened. It's an old one. It's like from the 1970s, I think. So some of the things that they said, I was like, well, not so relevant today. But the bigger picture, yes, I get it. I got one of those Bibles that you can doodle on, so you can kind of make that visualization with what you're reading, and have some apps. So trying to balance all of those, but there's definitely weeks where I'm like in it and feeling it. Like this past week with Christmas, I just felt so inspired and so much natural just joy, and definitely not like negative, anxious feelings or anything. But then there's weeks where I might be traveling for work or just have a lot going on, and I don't spend that deliberate time with God, and I can feel it. I can, in the things that go through my mind, or kind of the actions, the words I say, things like that. So it's a practice, and I'm practicing as much as I can, but I surely need to get better.
I love the line, practice makes progress versus practice makes perfect, because that's for all of us. That's part of relationship too. This idea of trying to realize that our relationship with God, sometimes we put it in this like it's all or nothing, or like we're either doing it perfectly or we're terrible, versus that's not our relationship with other people. I feel like we give a lot more grace to how that is, like you said, a process of learning and practicing and growing. And you have some days where you absolutely feel it, and you said like with husbands, and some days where you're frustrated and you're like, no, I still love this person, but we're working through stuff. And the older I get and the longer I am walking with God, the more I've realized how much that also is what my relationship with God looks like. So I've two more questions for you. First, we talk about this idea of, and it's funny because we hit on this, not just stewardship over, you know, our spiritual health, but also our physical health. And so what does that look like for you as somebody, not just, we've talked about obviously your job and with environment and things, but just your own self. What are the steps you're taking right now in this season to steward that well?
Mm-hmm. I love that this summer I didn't really go to the gym too much. And I was at ice cream with Bethany and Andy. And somehow my gym came up and I was like, yeah, Boost Fitness. And then Andy was like, didn't they change their name to Northborough Fitness 3 months ago? And I was like, whoops, guess I don't really know what's going on with my gym.
We're like, busted.
Right. But no, I have actually been in a gym kick. I like to go first thing in the morning because then you like wake up and I put on like my Christian music and just totally jam out and feel wonderful the rest of the day. And it was so funny because I had been in this few months where I didn't really go to the gym. I was just like outside or whatever, maybe on jogs. I had this great experience at the gym, so I decided to make a video of myself talking to myself, back to my 15-year-old, talking to my 20-year-old self. And the video was like, Laurie, it just went to the gym. It was so good. I feel so amazing. Get out of bed and go to the gym today. So I have it on my phone. So those days where you're just like under the covers, like, no one wake me. I need another 40 minutes of sleep. I try to think of that and be like, it's so worth it after. It's just stinks to get yourself up. So that's one, gymming it.
You made yourself your own just do it. Have you seen that video? Like, do it. You made yourself your own video. I love that. Do you play it for yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody needs to make this video. That's fantastic.
Who can you trust more than yourself saying you just had an awesome time at the gym? So yeah, that's one. But I like to do yoga as well, hot yoga. I'll go, there's a place actually on our street that Bethany and I share. And you can go like for lunch from 12 to 1 and go real quick and then get back to work. I like to go hiking. That's fun to share with like my dog, who I'm obsessed with. And I like to take baths. I don't know, like, I'm trying to think about, like, physical. I don't know, everything.
Those are all good.
Yeah, skiing. We just went skiing this past week, and that's, like, amazing when you're on top of the mountain and you see, like, God's beautiful land, and it's the fresh air and exercise all combined into one is one of our favorite things to do.
You, of anyone in my life, have come the closest to talking me into becoming a skier. And then I remember that I'm going to be unemployed after Sunday, and I'm like, no, not the time to become a skier.
I have skis you could borrow, so let's talk this out more offline. I love when people say offline, like if you're on a conference call, they're like, let's talk about this offline. It's like, are we online? But like literally right now, we are online.
So it applies.
Offline.
So, yeah. So my last question, which is, hopefully you've had plenty of time to think about this one, because we ask every single guest. In fact, the couple of times I've forgotten to ask, I've gotten a lot of flack for. So I just want all of our listeners to know this question was never meant to be like a benchmark of Hey Girl, but somehow it's just become that. And now you already know what I'm going to ask you because of the build-up. But I do want to know, what is the most superficial thing about you?
I was hoping season 2 would have a different last question.
I thought about making, maybe we can figure out another one, but now people are like, wait, right. What about...
It is fun. I feel like I need a lot more maturity because I feel like a lot in my life is superficial. I mean, it's all that we know is this life. I don't know, not to get like philosophical, but anyways.
This is the opposite of philosophical. Think shallow.
I like to call them simple pleasures instead of superficial aspects. But I would say heated seats in your car, like especially on a cold day. I have an automatic car starter, which is funny because I drive a hybrid, but I start it early, so I don't know if that cancels itself out, but I don't think it does. 99% sure. And so heated seats, it's like warm buns, like it's important this time of year.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then I love my trampoline, so I foreshadowed to it, so I should talk about it a little bit. So I always wanted this trampoline. I was a cheerleader. I did gymnastics, and my parents never got me one. They obviously don't love me. And finally, my husband got me one, and then I was like, okay, this guy is a keeper, so we have a trampoline. And if you have a bad day, jumping on a trampoline, it's like the best thing ever. It reduces stress and you just feel like a kid again. So I guess that's superficial because I have this awesome, huge trampoline at my house. And also kids, your kids, other people's kids love to come and jump on it. So it's like I can pretend it's for them as well, but it's really for me.
It does up your cool factor. So I love those. In heated seats, I think anybody who lives anywhere near us is going to be on board with that. So I know a few people that don't love them, because if you've had them and you're somebody that having a warm seat makes you feel like you just wet yourself, sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but I am telling you, it has changed my life. When we got our most recent vehicle has them, I feel like it's a luxury vehicle. I mean, it's not, but it feels like it is.
It does. I know, and that's like all perspective, right? Like there's people in other parts of the world that don't have basic things. I'm like, my seat heater's not on, whatever it's called. That my butt warm.
It's true. We might be a little spoiled. Yes. Oh, when you put it that way, gosh, we're the worst.
Or the best.
That's true. Again, perspective.
Right.
We're probably the best.
Probs.
So thank you so much for being willing to let me interview you. And truth be told, this is not the last they're going to hear of you, because you were going to be finally that other voice to help me process through all of these interviews that we're about to do for season 2. Do you have anything before we close this out, a thing that you're most excited for season 2 of Hey Girl?
Oh, man. One, getting like sneak peek of everything, and like maybe hearing some of the things that don't get posted, and be like, that was that funny story that they never posted because it's inappropriate, and actually getting to know it. I'm like excited for the listeners, so hopefully you guys like want to meet me, and I'd like love to be friends with you too and help you with your household chores and errands. Just kidding.
Absolutely.
No, but I mean, I never had listened to podcasts before Hey Girl, so I had to like download the app and figure it out, and I have been so inspired by the stories and like everyone in their place, running their race in their place, and just look forward to spreading more of that happiness and joy and inspiration, and talking to all of you lovely ladies and a few of the weird men that are also listening.
They're not weird, they're just special.
Exactly. Thank you for having me.
Aw, thanks for coming on. You know, work smarter, not harder.
Bethany was a good double.
I played the part of Satan very well. It was disturbing.
It's like, hey girl, and then I was like, let's go worldwide. So, bonjour fille, and hola chica.
Ooh, I like that one. Yeah. I think we should add that one in a few. Hola.